Just open this up in code. All right, let's put this. Throw one of these into the client. Go ahead and run yarn start and start up our Rails server. So yeah, where we left off yesterday, we have this grades and more page where we grab all of our users and we're just kind of stringifying this JSON. We grab all of our skills and all of our grades. And then we did a quick little form to create a grade, so we can come in here, add a score. And that updates our grades. Cool. And then also, if you remember, so our users and skills, how we're doing that in our controllers is just very standard, skill.all, render JSON skill.all. But with our grades controller, we came in here and we made this custom grade all and then some. So if we go to our Ruby or our grade file, we kind of did our own little method where we got all the grades and then we mapped. So we can define our own methods and kind of get back the data however we want. This is a bad way to do this, but just kind of wanted to do a little like brain teaser using map function, just kind of to show you like we can go into our model and just grab this data. We're eventually going to see how to do this with SQL. There's probably a Rails way as well where we could probably grab all of this information, but it works. So, and I did want to show you like part of the reason why this is a bad way to do it is, I know we don't really know SQL yet, but when I do that API grades, this is all like it's doing all of these SQL calls. So that's a lot of SQL calls for, doing one API call. Cool, but it works. So a couple things we could do. So as you're at, I kind of want to talk about as you're starting to create these projects, you're starting to like I think that they're getting a lot more intensive just to start. Like we have React routers set up. We have semantic or whatever UI framework you're using. We have a Rails project. I think it's good at some point, and you can do this on your own, to start creating like a starter project. Just a repo that you have that has maybe some of these basic things set up that you're going to be using on every project. And we'll get more into this next, when I think it's next week when we talk about like authentication. You're definitely going to want to have a starter project with authentication like up and running, because that's going to take like an hour or two to set up. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to have to do that all the time. So start thinking about that. Some other things that you can add to your starter project is like some custom components. So something we do a lot, or that I like to do, is to just render our JSON. So so I don't have to like map over. It's just a quick and easy way to see my data. So what I could do is, and it's not going to save that much code, but I kind of just want to demo how like I could kind of abstract this logic and throw it out into a component. So if you look at like my grades and more component, where we're doing like this, where we do this, we have a code, we could even maybe try like, let's see what a pre-tag looks like. I guess they're about the same. So some other things I can do with this stringify, just to maybe format it. I think this should make it wrap, or it could like format it. So if I don't have this null and two, this is going to like say, hey, throw it as a, like maybe a little more readable. It's going to like kind of format it for you. So you can have that option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a component. It's called stringify JSON.js. And stringify JSON. This is going to be a React component. I'm going to just destructure right here. Instead of doing props, I'm going to just say, hey, this is going to get a JSON prop. That's what I'm going to call it. And then this is going to return, like I could do, let's just start out with our code tag and then do JSON. Oh, well, I need to actually do the JSON.stringify. So it's a pretty simple component, but let's just use it. So now instead of doing this code tag, I'm going to do this stringify JSON. And then I can pass it, whatever the data I want to stringify. So that could be skills. That could be users. And that can be grades. Now, I think this doesn't really seem like maybe, let me just go back to what that looked like before. Like, so there's a couple things here, like I guess I didn't add this. So this is how it looks in my component. I think, one thing we get here, it's just a tiny, like I think in my mind, this is a little more readable by abstracting this into its own component, because we've been doing this a lot, where we stringify the JSON and just to render it. So by having this component, I think by that makes it just a little more readable than this. It's not super more readable, but also more importantly, what this also allows us to do, or what it does, the benefit of this is maybe down the road, I want to like add a style here. Give it like a background color. That looks, let's do like a very, let's do a, let's see what a border looks like. I guess that's like lining all of that, but okay, so that's not really what I want. So I could just, wrap this in a div. And then return, maybe style this div. But the thing is, since I have those all like sharing the same component, let's do like a really light gray. Let's do a light gray would be like GDD. And I can give this some like maybe some padding. So the nice thing here is now that when I'm styling all of this code, I'm just making changes to one place, but it's changing all of the places that are using this component. So, spend some time styling this. Etc. Border radius. So we've been doing like a lot of CRUD actions, lots of like API calls with our React components, that's great. That's one of the good things about React. But one of the other nice things about React is it allows us to create our own components that, just maybe are there for like, maybe some UI stuff. And then this is something like this stringified JSON. This could be something like this component could be added to your starter project. And then you have that for like the rest of the cohort. I'm getting a little ahead of myself because we're going to talk more about hooks next week, but let's do a little like teaser and we'll go over this again next week. I kind of just want to just kind of show you this. So, another thing we could do in our your starter project is have a hooks folder. And this is where we could write our own custom hooks. So something we do a lot of in this class is we do a lot of this like we do like an Axios call on mount. Where are we actually doing this? In our pages, grades, and more. How often have you done this where you have a component that when it mounts, it loads data? Where you need you create some state, and then you have a use effect, that gets the data and then it sets that data. We do that quite a bit, right? So this is and it's pretty much the same steps. If I have some grade state, or like I want to get my grades, I create grade state. And then I, can set that state. I do my Axios call. It's always in axios.get. The URL is different. But essentially that's like the only different thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a hook that does this, and it's going to save a lot of like a lot of code writing. So what I can do, I'm going to create a new file. So a rule with hooks, this is a rule, you have to do this. A hook has to start with the word use, lowercase use, use. So I'm going to create my own hook. I'm going to call this use Axios on mount. Because what we're going to do with this hook is we're going to use Axios to get data. So let's define this. So a hook is just a function. There's my hook. Or default. Use Axios on mount. So inside of here, so what I want to do is kind of try to abstract what I normally do when I get like just any kind of random data. So first I create some state with my use state hook. So let's go ahead and do that. So I can import use state from React. Cool. And then I can just create my state. Now, this is where I need to be think a little like abstract, you know, because my state could be grades, it could be cars, it could be hamburgers, tacos, whatever. So I'm just going to call it data. It's going to be this is going to be some data object. And then I'm going to create a set data equals use state. For this, I maybe don't want to do in an array because potentially, you know, we could do a use Axios on mount where it just grabs one thing. So it could maybe be an object. So for this one, I'm just going to have my initial state be null. All right. What else do we do when we get data? We have a use effect. We have a use effect that calls an async function to get the data. Okay, so let's do that. Let's grab our use effect from React. Use effect. And we give it the empty array, so this only runs on mount. We can call some function, and we'll just call it get data. We can define that function, const get data. And here's our async function. Oh, let's just write it like this, async function. Or do something like this, let response equal, also we need Axios. So import Axios, await Axios.get. Well, I need a URL here. That's something that changes, right? The URL is going to be different. And then I can do something like this, set data res.data. I'm going to make this note though. You know, this is assuming, this is making an assumption that this is how the data is coming back. And that will break, you know, that's not That's not a great assumption. Because we've seen other APIs where like the res.data, like this might come back as res.data. But we're just going to assume if we use this hook, it has to come back as res.data. Does that make sense? There's one, I think it's, if I do rec res in, if I do a request to this dummy API, this is the response.data. So it has some other options on it, like page per page total pages, and then it has the data key. So if I wanted to get this array of objects, I have to do res.data to grab that array. So this is kind of a unfair assumption, or it is an assumption, but it's going to work. It's going to work for now. And for the majority of what we do, just no, it's not. This use Axios on mount, we could make a little more flexible, but we're just trying to keep it simple for now. And then what I could do is return. I'm just going to return this as an object. Let's return data. Because something else we might want to do is, let's throw this in a try catch. Block. Because if there's an error, maybe I want to like send that back. For now, I'm just going to set error to like, a string error occurred. And then we can send back the error. And since my keys and values are the same, I don't need to put them there twice in JavaScript. And then maybe I could throw in like a to-do, like send back a better error message. So does this, like, just looking at this, because now it's kind of like a basic use Axios on mount. It's not perfect. There's definitely some little hidden like bugs in here, like this res.data, maybe how we're setting back the error. It's not the best, but do you see how this is kind of what we do every time, or like this is what we largely do when we do like have a component on mount to get data. It's these same steps, right? We just do that over and over again. So what we can do is we can abstract those steps that we do to something a little more generic. So instead of grades, I'm just calling this data. Right? It could be grades, it could be one grade, it could be users, it could be skills. But we do the same thing. The one thing that I do need to give to this function for this to work is a URL. Well, this is just the function, so that's just, boom, now that's defined. So when I use my Axios on mount, I just need to give it a URL. And then when this this is going to give me back an object with a data key and an error key. And the data key is going to be my state. So I'm going to do this just so we have a copy of this. I'm going to just do a new file and call this like grades and copy more.js and more copy. I just want to create a copy of this. I'm going to take this file and just throw it in there. Just because I'm going to change up this file. I just want to have a copy of the way we had it. So let's use our hook and see how much we can clean up this component. So I'm going to have this. I'm just going to get rid of this for now. Let's just get rid of all of this because we don't need our get data. We don't need our use effect. And we'll get rid of these for now. So but I still need these variables. I need this data, users, skills, grades. Sweet. So let's do that. Const data. And let's just do our grades first. And error equals use Axios on mount. And I need to pass this a URL. So this is going to be API/grades. Now I return that as an object with data and error. And I think those are good names, but this is one case where I'm doing multiple calls. So I want to rename this. So I can rename that like that. I need to destructure data because that's how I'm sending it back. This object has a data key. So I need to destructure it, but then I can rename it to whatever I want. And we'll just maybe rename this to gerr. Should probably just call that grades error, but all right. And then for now, let's just comment these out just to see if this is working, and then we'll do the same for those. So now I should be able to get my grades. Let's go back. Oh, set grades is undefined. Where am I? Oh yeah, I do my add in here. One way I could fix this is kind of a little different. I could send back my use Axios on mount. I could also send back this function, that hook, to set the data. And then I could pull that off of my hook. Set data. And then yeah, rename that to set grades to define that. We're also going to get into next week a better way to manage our state. As our apps get more complicated, this is kind of a weird way to do this. But as our apps get more complicated, we're going to probably want like our state to be global. So we're going to create global state, which might help clean this up. But this still works. We're just trying to get this to work. So On my use axios on mount hook, I just send back my setter function. And then I rename it to set grades. Now that's defined, and boom, there are my grades. So yeah, if I have an error, let's just have an error. Let's just change that to something that's undefined. Refresh. That's null. Because, well, I could do something like this. Could do a little check first, like error and what did I call it? Grade error. Grades error. So I could first see if that's defined and then render that, because that grades error right now is just a string. Oh, I need to interpolate that. Sorry. I could, so I can get back that error message from my use axios on mount. For now, it's just returning that string error occurred. Now this is coming back as null. Now, what might happen if you tried to do like a, instead of like, let's say we don't stringify JSON, we do a, like here we do like a grades.map. There's going to be a couple things going on here. So let's look at this. It's just for now, just trying to do a demo. So I'm just going to throw in the ID here, g.id. So I do grades.map, just rendering the ID. Just want to show this. So I can't, I'm going to get an error reading properties of null because I have in a bad URL. So let's fix the URL. And let's try this. So I'm still getting cannot read properties of null. If I comment this back out, like my stringified JSON grades, let's just see if that's working. That's giving me an error. Let's refresh, just get it working. Save, I'm not trying, oh, I need to, sorry, do this. Comment that one out, the map function. Okay. So I just wanted to show you like the Axios call is working. I'm getting the data. Grades is defined. So why, if I try to map over my grades, am I getting an error? So it's a little weird, right? This was working when I had, like, it was able to render JSON grades. Like I saw my grades, they were there. But when I look at this is where it's breaking. Cannot read properties of null reading map. So it's, it's telling me it's right here. Any ideas why that's happening? This kind of goes back to use it like to kind of the life cycle of a React component. So let's look at our use Axios on mount. What is my data? The initial state is null. This, remember, the use effect does not get called until after the component mounts. So my component first does a mount, even before we try to even get the data. So when this first runs, grades is going to be null, and it's going to try to render this to the DOM. So grades is going to be null. We're going to do null.map. There's my error. What we've been doing in this class is, we've been setting, usually when we set our state, we might have this be an empty array. So when it first mounts, even though there's nothing in it, it's defined and it's in an array. So I can do I can call .map now, and that's going to work because .map still works even if the array is empty. It just needs to be called on in an array. So then I render that, and there it is. There's me mapping over my grades. If I set that back to null, there's my error. Now, I think as you're coding this, you don't really see that because it happens so fast. You don't see your component mount and then, get the data. It just seems to just be there. But that is what's happening behind the scenes. But yeah, for this, I do want this to start at null because I'm not sure what the initial state's going to be. I could maybe throw that as a prop, or as not a prop, sorry, but as a parameter, initial state. But for Axios on mount, there's really not going to be an initial state. It's just going to be, null. It's going to be an empty array or an object. So what I can do to fix this a quick little check, I can just see if my grades is defined. Do a grades and grades.map. So if grades is null, we're going to stop right here. We're not going to try to map. If grades is defined, then we're going to map over this. So that's a quick little way to fix that. So now with this use Axios on mount, let's go grab our other data. So, and it's going to be really easy. So we're just going to grab, data. And maybe I don't really care about errors right now, so I don't have to pull it off, but let's grab our users. Equals use Axios on mount /API/users. And then I could grab my skills, use Axios on mount. And now I should be able to comment these out. Skills is not defined. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Cool. Our code's a little cleaner, right? If I compare the other one, I don't need this function anymore. I don't need my use effect. Don't need to create all this state. So I can abstract this logic into a hook, into my own custom hook. And clean up my code. And reuse that logic. And then also, let's say down the road, I want to add some more functionality. So something I might want to do with, my Axios on mount is, maybe I want a loader or some sort of loading UI to say, hey, this is loading. Well, if I had this the way before, like before this hook, I would have to go do that on all my Axios calls and duplicate all this logic. But what I can do now is I can set this up here in this hook. So how to do that? Let's just kind of think about this. So I'm going to create some state. I'm just going to call it loading. And then we'll get the setter equals use state. So since this is this is meant to be used on mount, I'm going to, by default, loading is going to be true. And then, so this will be loading is going to be true by default. And then what I can do is when this is successful, I can just set loading to false. Once my Axios call is done. And I might want to, I'm definitely also want to set loading to false if there's an error, because that means it's also done. You know, I might want to, you know, this is maybe a little redundant, but just to kind of, the logic is, you know, let's set loading to true before we do our Axios call. Let's try doing our Axios call. And then once it's done, or once it fails, we'll set loading to false. And now I have this loading state. Well, let's just throw that in our object, loading. So now I can go to this and go to like my users or whatever. Let's do loading. So I can pull off that loading key. I want to rename it since I'm using this hook a couple times. I can do like users loading. And then something like this. I could have some UI that's like users loading and could also maybe do an and here, like users and I think there's ways we could clean this up, but let's get some practice with our short circuit evaluation. So if users are loading, we'll say loading users. If we have users, we'll stringify them. Let's refresh. That's like, you can't really see it because it's happening so quick. But let's make it so we can see it, just so I can test that it's working. So what I'm going to do is in my use effect, I'm going to call this set timeout function. So the set timeout function is a function that takes a function as its first argument, and then its second argument is a time in milliseconds. And so what it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, let's wait as long as you tell me to wait before I call this callback. So what I want to do is I want to wait 2 seconds, then we'll call our function, and then our function will call get data. So the set timeout will just say, hey, wait 2 seconds before you call get data. That's what I'm saying here. So now if I refresh, see there's my loading users, and then that pops up. Now this is like obviously for testing UI. I want to remove this because this slows that, like this adds 2 seconds to my API call. So I refresh. Sweet. So I can see that loading users, and then we get our data. But now, since we've done this in our use, like in this use Axios on mount component, now all of these API, now my skills has loading state, loading, call this skills loading. So now I can do that here, skills loading, and now I can come up with a message. I actually have a semantic loader. Like maybe we want a better UI than just it saying, loading users or loading skills. So here's how you can do a loader in semantic. I'll just slack this out. And you could, like, this is once again something you could have in your starter project. Maybe you have some different kind of loaders. You can create your own. You can go find some on Google. But here's just an example of, a loader. So now I could use this instead of, saying a paragraph. So I could use that component, like loading, what do I call it? I call it semantic loader. So now when it has that, it maybe a little bit better UI. It's got like a spinner. It's like saying, hey, I'm just loading like some paragraphs. And with something like this, it has the content loading. I could come in here and be like give it like a message. Let's just call this prop text. So I could do something like this. I could say, hey, let's first see if there is text, because maybe I don't want to always have to throw text in. So if the text prop is given, let's use that. If we don't have text, let's just have it say loading. So that should work the same. Text is not. Oh, duh. I'm importing that from semantic. This is going to be a prop to this component. So we'll just put it right there. Just destructure right up there in our function. So does this get the text prop? If it does, let's use it. If not, let's use loading. I hit refresh. So I don't have a text prop right now given to it, so it's just saying loading. Let's give it a value. So my semantic loader now I can say text equals skills loading. Refresh. Now I can give it a custom little message. So we just did a little demo on like a custom hook that we created. And kind of also, I mean, created this semantic loader. But really what we're largely doing here and with the stringified JSON is we're trying to abstract and make all of this code that we do over and over again a little more generic so we can reuse it. That's going to have the effect of like simplifying our code. So my grades and more, I can just use that Axios on mount, can get the data, can get like loading UI and maybe some error handling with just this one line. Like that's this one line of code now is doing all of this. So that's cleaning up my code quite a bit. Because this component's only, you know, right now it's only like 50 lines of code and we're doing 3 Axios calls, adding a grade, like doing that UI. So, you know, there's quite a bit going on here. Is there any questions on this? I know this has nothing to do with like the has many. This is more just as you know, I think as you go through this course, and especially with React, it's a challenge to do this kind of thing, to like abstract your code and make your code more reusable. So just try it out and like try to do it as you're like working through your homework. Just get that practice. Cool. Let's go ahead and take a break. Are there any questions on this? If you don't have the questions, you can come back at, let's just call it 10:50. I'll stick around for a second if anyone has any questions. I'll also push this up to GitHub. All right. Let's get started. So I want to do one more. We'll kind of do some of these custom components as we go throughout the course. I want to do one more, and feel free to do your own, as like I said, as you're going through your homework, or try creating your own. You don't feel like you have to use the way I'm doing it. I'm kind of keeping these simple. You can make simple ones, you can make complicated ones. Just experiment with it. Something that I want to kind of make, and just to kind of show you this, is I think something we do a lot is we make like, well, I do a lot is I do this stringifying JSON thing. But it seems like we get data a lot, so we do. That's why we did our use Axios on mount. But another thing we do a lot is like render a list of things. So how do we kind of make that a little generic and put that in a component? So let's do that. Let me show you how to do something like that. This one's a little less intuitive, but I'm going to create a list component. Now, my list is, it's going to get from props. It's going to get, it needs some sort of data, right? Like a list is going to render over data. Something else I might want for a list is a name. For example, we have here like a header. So we have like a title or like a name of my list. So for this, we could do like users and just throw that in there. So if I start doing this, return, let's just do like I'm going to do a fragment for now. So I could do like my, H3 or whatever. I could, just decide what I wanted my header to be. And boom, now my header has a name. And then I could, here I could use my stringify JSON component. And the JSON is just going to be the data. Then I can export default list. So this component now is expecting 2 props. Maybe I want this header to be optional. So I could say, hey, do I have a name? Was a name prop given to this component? If a name prop was given to it, render a header. If it wasn't, then we're just going to stringify the JSON. So let's just test this out. So I'll go back to my grades and more. So now I can do something like this. Get rid of this line of code and this line of code. And just do list. And my data that I'm giving this list is going to be the users. List is not defined. I need to import this. So semantic UI also has a list. I don't want to use that one. So I'm gonna make sure you import the one we just defined. I guess I'll just manually do this. So import list from, I'm importing it from, I have to go back a folder, go into my components, grab my list. That break it? It's saying no. Oh, I think I stopped my server. Commit. Refresh. So it's loading users. Now it is saying null. So I could do that check in my list now. Maybe I could do something like data. And, I could even maybe throw in the loader here. But I think for now, I'm just going to keep it like this. It's pretty basic. Actually, I'm not even going to do this here. I'm going to do this logic still here. Let's do it here. Users. Or I don't know. That's kind of where you can decide where you can throw that. I think it's kind of a trade-off. If I do it here, I'm kind of stuck with that functionality. This is where this gets like a little challenging. Like it's kind of this decision-making process. This is nice because it like cleans up my code. So then I don't have to do that. But then I'm kind of stuck with that functionality if, this has a name. Let's give it a name now. Yo. Like now it's saying users, if I refresh, it's kind of like you kind of become like a designer at this point. But I don't know. I think for now, I don't want to really make this. I'm trying to just keep my list component simple. I could definitely throw in like this functionality, throw in the spinner here, give it some loading state. But really all I want for now is this list to just, it's just going to assume it's going to like get this data. So that's like an assumption I'm making. Like for this list to work, it needs to get a data prop. It doesn't have to get a name prop because that's something I'm checking for. But that's kind of like an arbitrary decision. I'll just say like, that has to be handled out when you use it. So here I need to check because this list component needs users. So I'm just going to do that check right here. Because then I can, loading users, and there it is. So that's a way you could do it. But yeah, if we wanted to, let's say we do want some loading state. Let's just add that. Yeah, that's not, because let's just keep it like this. Sorry, I'm going back and forth. See, I'm second guessing. All right. So it's loading my users and then it's rendering, stringifying the JSON. That's nice. I have that feature, but normally in a list, what we actually do is we do a map, right? Because this is a list, so I'm assuming data is going to be in an array. So I can call a map function on it. Now, this is a little bit of the tricky part. How do we make this generic? Doesn't when in our map function, really what we do is we go through each thing. So we take each thing and then we like return JSX. Right? This really, another way, so this is another way I could kind of describe what's going on here is, a function goes here, to say what to render or like how to render each thing. Does that make sense? Data.map, when in React, when we do our map over our array, we pass that map function a function just to say, hey, this is how I want each thing to look. Like, if the thing was a car, I give it a function like, okay, you're going to get a car, and I want you to give me back a paragraph with like car.name. If it's a house, give me back a paragraph with house dot whatever address. And that'll go through and give me paragraphs for all the houses. But essentially all this is just a function. It's just a way to tell me how to like render the data. So what I'm going to give to my list is that function, render data. My list doesn't know how could a generic list component know how to go through and render something. So as part of this component, I'm just going to tell it how to render it. I'm going to give it a function. All right, so now let's go see that in action. What does that look like? Well, in my list, it needs a render data prop. Well, this is I just need to give it a function. Or like a React component. But let's just do, so this function, I'm going to say, hey, you're going to get a user. And what I want you to do is, return whatever user.name. I'll do that. Save without formatting. So how you could maybe write this is users, and then we have our list. I can throw these. So what the auto save is doing, it's throwing these on new lines just to maybe hopefully make this a little more readable. Something like that. So here's my list. I give it some data. Here's your array of users. I can give it a name. Here's your users. And I can also give it this render data function that tells my list, like, here's the function to pass to that map. So this one's saying, hey, go through each user and return a paragraph with user.name. And now my list is going through user.name. So now with my list, well, now I have two of them. I have this render JSON and I have this actual list. So I could do something like this. I could say, hey, you know, if there's not a render data function, then return the stringified version. If there is a render data function, then map over it. So this one does have a render data function, so it uses that function that I gave it. It goes through and it renders the users. Cool. And I could also, so in my grades and more, where was I doing? So right here, you know, I could do something like that. Skills. I could do my list component. Give it some data. Skills. So those are my skills. So my skills does not have a render data function, but if I don't give it one, it's just going to render, it's going to use that stringified JSON component. But I could, if I wanted to, give this, tell this how to render a skill. Well, let's do this one. Well, actually, let's keep this one like this. So this one has no render data function. Or I should call it a prop, no render data prop. But it still works. And then now we can use our list for our grade. Grades and list. Data is grades. Let's also go ahead and like remove these headers because now that's a prop on here. So we can give this like the name of the list. This could be skills. The name of my grades can be grades. List data name is grades. Why is that not working? Oh, I have this extra one right here. So there's my skills, there's my grades. Let's say maybe we want our grade to be like a semantic card because, you know, there's a lot going on here. We have our score, username, skill name. So let's go ahead. Let's just pull off a cards from semantic. Let's do card component. Whatever, I think this one looks fine. I'll just copy this one. Actually, card content. Yeah, sure, I think we can make this work. So what I'm going to do for this one is just create a new file, call it grade.js, and I'll select this out. So I'm just going to do my React component, const grade. What does a grade have? A grade has a score. I'm just going to pull everything off here. It has a score, an ID, a username, right? Username, skill name, a user underscore ID, and a skill underscore ID. Those are all the things I'm getting back. If I look at one object that has all of those things. So I'll just destructure those in my props. Then I can go ahead and return this card from semantic and export grade. Then how do I, maybe this is, we'll see. So let's, for the header, let's just combine our username and then we'll do also the skill name. Or actually, let's do a username just right there. And then for this description, we'll say got. I'll kind of just create a random string got. We'll do this score, interpolate score on skill name. Oh, sorry, this should be score on skill name. I'm going to get rid of this icon. And we'll just throw some information here like user ID can be the user ID. And this skill. All right. So I can create this component. So this is how I want to render one grade. I'll see if this works and then I'll slack it out. But so my render data, I can pass it either a function. I mean, this is just, that's like, remember, this is just like a functional component right there. Or my render data, since I could pass it, you know, that grade component. And then, oh, is this how, oh, crap, how am I going to spread out over the grade? Let's see, I don't think this is going to work. Grade is not defined. Object is not a function. I'm gonna have to get, so the problem here is this render data. I have this grade component that's not going to, like, how do I pass those props down? Right here. So there's some extra steps that I'm going to have to do. So I think it's just going to be easier if I just take this function and pass that directly to my render function. But the point here is, like, I can have a render data that I just need to tell out to render one of the things. It could be something simple, like a paragraph, like a single paragraph, or it could be like this, component like this one is. Let's define card right here. And there we go. So my list now is able to, it can do something simple. It can handle, if I don't give it a render data function, it'll just use that stringify JSON. Or, I can give it like a full on like semantic component to render these. So let me slack out this whole file. Cool. Are there, so, and yeah, like with this list, we could maybe, if, once again, since I'm now using this list component, maybe I can go in and, later down the line, I can add functionality to this, or, style to it. So if I come in and add a style to my list component, like maybe I want to do a display flex. Now all of my lists are going to be displayed flex. And then I could kind of maybe, like, as I get more and more involved, maybe I want to like make that dynamic. Or I could do like a, border 1 pixel solid black. And let's also do like a little margin. So now all my lists have a black border and 10 margins of 10 pixels of margin. And they're all sharing the same header, so that this helps create that uniformity. Because they're all using like an H3 header, so they all kind of look the same. And you can like get into like, you can make this really, you could give this like a function to sort. Like you can start getting a little, like make this really complicated. You could do like, you could add like your use Axios on mount here. You could have this list component do an Axios on mount and pass it the URL. So yeah, you can make this that's kind of the fun thing with React. You can kind of just build these components, and you can take these components that you're building and just build new components with those components. Like, yeah, we could totally have this take a URL and do like our const data, or like whatever, get some data from here. Like do a check if we have a URL, you know, do stuff like that. So, a lot of fun. I think this is why I really like React. I think it's a lot of fun to like start building these components and adding all this functionality to them. So it's a little challenging, but I would say as you're doing your homework, kind of experiment with that a little. So sweet. Let's now that we have a couple components, let's just go build out a page really quick. Let's just do a users page. And let's kind of use some of these custom components we created just to kind of see how this, like we took some time building those, but if we find we're doing things over and over again, if we can abstract that logic, then it's going to save us time in the long run. So let's just like import React from React. If you're doing like a functional component, you really don't have to do this. You've noticed on other components, I might be skipping that, but let's just do our users component. All right, so const data. So I'm going to get my data, my error, and my loading equals use Axios on mount. So I'm just doing a page where we're getting my users. So I'm going to go to /API/users. So I can do something like this. I can do an if statement, if error. Let's do a render data function. Let's do like a render users. So what I'm going to do here, I can do like a little simple check. I can say like, hey, if we have an error, let's have this function return, you know, whatever error occurred. And then if loading, we can return maybe my semantic loader that I made, semantic loader. Else we can return our list. Let's do this, because this data might not be defined. Actually, since we're checking if we have loading, because our data is going to be set, or we're either going to have an error or we're going to have data at this point with our use Axios on mount. So at this point, I can just give that to my list. I can give this a name, equals users. I should call this render users. So this render users function, it's going to check to see if I have an error, then we can do some error UI. If I have if I'm loading, I can do some loading UI. If not, I'm going to just return that list. And then this function return. Do this render users function. And maybe I want like a header like h1 users page. And we can export default. So that really didn't take too much time to write that out, but it's doing quite a bit. We're doing an Axios call. We're also doing, you know, some error handling and some loading UI. It's relatively simple, but you know, we're still doing it, which is, you know, a lot. And then we're going to render out this users function. Then we'll render a list. So let's see what this looks like. So I need to create this route. So let's go to users. Then the component is going to be users. So make sure you import that. So just in my app.js, just adding a route for this. Then to be nice to myself, I'll add it as well to my navbar. It's a nice thing to click. So I can just copy one of these links. So this 2 needs to match the path in my app.js. This location.path name, this is going to make, that's a styling thing where it's going to give it the active prop if those match. Okay, so I have this error list is not defined in my users list. So let's import that. Don't import it from semantic, definitely won't work. I guess I just have to manually import it. So I can go to users, have my loading UI, and it renders my users. It does, I didn't give it the render data function, but it still like is rendering them as like this, you know, a little nice stringify JSON thing. And then once again, I have my black border with the user's header. So it's adding that consistency as far as my styles are concerned. So all of my lists are going to look the same. All my load, like now that's the loader is going to look the same since I'm using the same loader. So now something I could do here is, you know, maybe I don't want this to be, you know, this stringified JSON, so I can go grab. There's really not much on our users, right? I think it's just a name. So let's just give this a render data function. So I'm going to tell my list how I want it to render each user. Let's give it a user. So I'll throw these on new lines. So it might be a little easier to read this way. Render user. Let's go ahead and return. Let's maybe do it, still grab a card from semantic. Do a card dot header and just give it the user dot name. And if I want to avoid that error, I can give this a key. Or actually, No, I don't think that'll work. Let's just see if this is going to work. So there's my list. I can give it a special this render data function to tell how I want it to render. And there we go. There's my list of users. Yeah, I could wrap this. If I wanted to style this, like if I don't like how this is getting rendered, I could try doing this in my list, or I could just, throw this in a div, do some styling stuff here. Display equals flex. Maybe like so remember if we inspect our element and we have a flex box, we can kind of come in here and experiment with some stuff. So I could get my flex box, maybe try some different directions. So I could do, let's do a row. Oh, that is row. Do column. I don't know, why is it wrapping? No wrap. Let's do width here. I want this to take up like the full size. Width, let's try 100%. Width, why is that not growing? Oh, there's a div, right? Oh, okay, I see what's going on. So how I have my list is I have that in a div. So I can't really throw the flex box there because my list component has a div wrapped around that. So if I wanted to do flex stuff, I would actually have to do it in my list component. So I guess I'll just leave it as is for now. I think that's a little more complicated than I want to make this list component. Just keep it simple for now. Cool. And yeah, like I've said this like for a while now, it's having a good UI. I mean, I think there's so much subjective stuff. Like people don't like, some people like borders, some people don't like borders, some people like, the border radius, some people don't. Like some people like box shadows, other people don't. So there's a lot of like subjectiveness into a good UI, but there are things that I think really are like, everyone will probably feel the same about this. And one of like the biggest thing I think is like consistency with your design. Like we haven't spent too much time on design, but with this project, with making it look good, but it's at least like consistent. I mean, definitely need to do something about how these are aligned, but it's not looking horrible. And that's definitely an advantage you get with creating, some custom components and then reusing those in your app. So anywhere I'm going over an array of data, I can reuse that list component. Cool. Let's see here. Any questions on this? So I'm getting a little. Let's also just, since we're here, let's just create a new file. Just do the same thing for skills.js. I could take my users component. I'm not going to do this, but so I just copied and pasted that. When you start to copy and paste a lot of code, that might be a hint, not all the time, but that sometimes can be a hint. Hey, maybe you can abstract this into like a custom hook or a custom component or a custom function and reuse that logic. Because, now I'm getting to the point, well, with this, I could, if I wanted to have this component just grab my skills, kind of do the same thing. Well, I just can change these names so it's a little more readable. Skills, that's going to do an API call to skills. But this could be the same, like same error handling, same loader, same list, change the name. Skill. Skill has a name. Skill also has a description, so that's something we could add on that. To the card. And then this would be like our skills page and render skills. Cool. And then just like I did with the users, I just need to add this as a route. Skills. Make sure I import skills. Then I could render that to my nav bar. So I have that link. Skills, and skills. I go to skills. Same loading UI. Ooh, I have my error handling. That's cool. That's working. Error curve. I think my error is I don't have my server running. But even the simple message error occurred, that's better than nothing. There's my loader. There's my skills. And we did that in like, I think we did that in like 4 minutes. So we have a page, we added it to our nav bar, we added it to our routes. It has a header, it's list over a, list of skills, has loading UI, has an error UI. It's pretty straightforward. Cool. Yeah, let's go ahead now. Let's take a break. Time is it? 11:40. Let's do another. Let's come back at, let's call it 11:55. Does anyone have any questions? I'll push this up to GitHub right now. Okay, let's see here. Let's get started. So let's keep going on with this. So we've created some nice little custom components to help speed things up. But yesterday when we left off, let's kind of get back to like where we left off yesterday. If you remember, we have this form, you know, where we have to manually like enter the ID, you know, which is of the user, and the skill, which is, you know, pretty bad UX and UI. So what we wanted to do, and I need to start my server, is when we get our grade data back, we can look at it. We have data that looks like this, and I'm actually going to go back here and get rid of this render data function. Well, actually, let's leave it. We have our data that it looks like this, where a grade object has an ID, it has a name, has a created at, or sorry, I'm getting this reversed. We want, what we want to do is we want our users and our skills. We want to, instead of having to manually throw in the user ID and skill ID, we want to create a select from with using semantic in our form. So we have our objects that look like this. They have ID, name, created at, updated at. Now, where we left off yesterday is, you know, a semantic select component has an options prompt, and it wants the data to look like this. It wants it to be an array of objects that have key, value, and text. So we need to go from our array of, you know, how our data is coming back from the API to how semantic wants it. And this is something that, you know, becomes more and more common. Like you're going to get data back from your API, but it's not necessarily going to match how you want to display it. So you're going to have to do some like normalizing. You're going to have to like normalize it to match the way you want it. So let's do that. So we have we're getting our grades, and we have our, users and skills. So what we can do is create a function to create that array. So I'm going to do a const. I'm going to call this just normalize users. Actually, that doesn't need to be past anything. So I want to go through my users array, and I'm going to map over it. I'm going to go through each user, and I want to return, you know, this object that semantic wants. And I actually have to do this as a multiple line now. Okay, so I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to return this object. I don't want this key. So the key is for React. I'm going to use the ID of the user for the key. The value is, this is what we're going to get on the Onchange. So this is kind of what I'm going to eventually want to send up to the database. What I want to send up to the database is the user ID. But the text I want to be something that's human readable. So I want that to be the name. I'm going to return this. So my normalize users function goes through my users and it maps over them to create that array, that new array, that semantic, the semantic select box once. So let's, you know what, maybe I should do this. Sorry, I'm going to do this in my form. So what I'm going to do here is for this grade form basics, this grade form basic, or let's leave this the same. Let's create another one. Since that is just a basic form, let's do a new file, grade form.js. And just take what's in the basic form and let's just copy and paste that inside of here for now. So we can have 2 copies of this. But we're going to change this one up. So that's my grade form. Okay. And actually, just so this is easier to see, I'm going to just throw this right at the top of my grades and more page. Make sure I imported that. Yep. Divider right here. Just create some space. Divider. Okay, so I have my grades and more. So I have this form right here. That's just a copy. But we're going to change this one. So this one I'm going to pass it the users array. As a prop and the skills array. And I'm going to take this normalized data, or sorry, this normalized users function. I'm just going to command exit and paste it in my grade form. And now instead of it's being users, so that's getting passed as props. So users, I now have props.users. And just to see this working, I could use my stringify JSON component. And the data is going to be equal to this normalize users. And I need to call that. It's kind of a weird place to put this, but I just kind of want to see that working. So I can use my component. I'm just checking to see that my data is, looking like something, and I can see it's not. So let's see here. I just want to try something out here. Let's just return a hard-coded array. I want to make sure that this is actually working. Yeah, I don't know if, let's try one other thing. I don't know if it likes this component inside of my form. So I'm gonna wrap my form in a div and throw this up here. Oh, sorry. My stringify JSON does not have a data prop, right? That's what I did wrong. If I go look at my stringify JSON, it's expecting a JSON prop. So I need to call this JSON. There you go. There's my x equals 1. So that was my error. Let's see if that's working now. So there's my array key value text. So just using that's what I want, because that is something I can pass to a semantic select. If I look at semantic, if I look at like their select component, see, they want that array of objects with key value and text. And then I can pass that to a select component with as the options prop. So let's switch my form field to say user, and then instead of using the input, I'm going to use the select component. And options is going to be my array from the normalized users function. And then I can get rid of this stringify JSON. Go back here. Let's refresh. Oh, it was there, sorry. No, it doesn't like, I guess users cannot read properties of null reading map. So I'm getting that error again because users is not defined. So let's do a check here, users and skills and, well, I guess we don't have to do skills for now. Let's just do users and. But we are eventually going to need to check. We're going to get that same error with skills. So what I can check, if I have users and I have skills, then render this grade form. So I go to my users and see now I have this select box where it's the text is showing as the names. So there's all my users. I can select one. So yeah, so the documentation on semantic, like I said, can be a little difficult. So sometimes you might have to go try to Google it, Google the like question you're asking with semantic. Because one thing I want to know here is how do I do an Onchange handler? It doesn't really show me here. It's kind of a little confusing that it's not really showing me how to throw in an Onchange here. So I'll just show you how to do it. Let's go back to our grade form. I'm going to do my Onchange. Pretty sure with this one, we can give it the event. But remember how I showed you could grab the value off of that second thing? So we can do that. And then we can set user ID to value. You can always just throw in, I mean, it's probably not good ID, but like a good UI, but just as I'm testing, I can just see like if this is working, like is the user ID set? So let's look at that. So the user ID right now, it's nothing. Let's go select one. See how that's 3. That's 1. That's 4. And that's, just some stuff going on behind the scenes, but the value, that's what's going to get set there when I do this on change. That's what I'm getting back. So I can use the text to show something friendly to the user of the app, but then the value, that's the actual thing I want to send, is the user ID. So I could do the same thing with my skills, normalize skills. So this is going to go over props.skills. Let's call that S. So I think for the key, we want the ID. For the value, we also want the ID. For the text, I think then it happens to have the name key too. So I think that works. And I can do the same thing on my form field for my skill ID. Get the select. I'll call my normalize skills function to take my props.skills and turn it into the array that the selects once. And we'll just right here set skill ID. And then we can show that right here. Skill underscore ID. So now I have a select box. So it's easier to pick. And this way, like the user can't give me, like it's a way to protect, because the user can't just enter some random thing in here. Like they have to pick one of the options that, are in my database. And then the score, they can enter whatever. Props that add grade is not a function. So remember with this form, we have our handle submit. And let's just check that. Maybe that console.log is there. Let's see if we sent the right data. Is that it? Grade form object. There's our score, skill ID, user ID. So it looks like, and we could check our server. Yeah, see this, it's kind of hard to read since we're doing all these SQL calls. I'm looking for that post. I think it worked, but where we went wrong is we need to just add this add grade prop. So we need to pass that down. So we need to go back to our grades and more. And then we can add, we already have this functionality done where we do the add grade. So let's add that as a prop. So there's the prop add grade, and then the value is going to be, oh wait, the function, sorry, this function actually does the Axios call. So this add grade is expecting to get the grade. It's going to do the post, send that data, and then it should store that to the database, but also update our UI. And then our grade form, we call that add grade function and actually give it the values from our form. Let's try this out. Let's do Eveta. Let's get them score, then sane score add. Let's look at our grades. Is that too big of a number? score 321 on undefined. So this is coming back as undefined. I have the user ID, I have the skill ID. So that's something we need to go check. And then also the name is undefined. You know, I'm sure if I refresh this, so one way I can kind of see how stuff is working is I can refresh, do the Axios call again. Go look at my skills. It might be at the very bottom now. So like, I know it's getting, this is a nice little test because like, I know it's successfully getting saved to my database. So Yvette and Michelle, there's the 321 on Ruby. So I know the issue is not with my database, it's more with my UI. Because if I give like Marino a score on Ruby of like, 444. Yeah, that's coming back as undefined. The score is not, but the name and the skill is. So we could look at that right here on our grades and more. Let's just do a console.log here. See how our response is coming back. Response. This error might have been here yesterday and we just never caught it because it was kind of hard to read that JSON. So I kind of want to see what's going on here. I could do a console.log. Another way you can do you can throw in a debugger. This is another good way to do it. Throw in this keyword debugger, and this is going to pause your code right there. It's like a binding.pry. You could refresh. Let's do React, whatever, 444. Clear my console, so I hit add. That puts me in this binding.pry. It puts me right here. So, you know, I can inspect, see what, like, here's my grade. It's got the skill ID, it's got the user ID. And then, yeah, I know what's going on. So I can go into my console and I can do like a res.data. And there we go. So what I'm getting back when I render JSON back, I'm just rendering back. I create the grade and then I send that grade back. The grade does not have the user ID or skill ID. Right? Like we're using, sorry, the grade does not have like the username information or skill name or description. It just gives us back the ID. So there's a couple different ways we could do this. I could, in my back end, let's see, my grades controller. I could do it here, maybe like render JSON grade. But if I wanted to, maybe send back the username. Be grade dot user dot name and the skill name be grade dot skill dot name. So I could get back the grade. Also, you know, the user, like I could just throw on this data. Let's get out of my debugger. Let's clear my console and click add again. I have a 500 error. So 500 error probably like forgot a comma or something, but let's look at this. Undefined local variable or method grade. Did you mean at grade? Yes, I did. So I need my at symbol here, at symbol there. So now if I click clear this, click add. In my debugger, look at my response. So if I do a response.data, well, now I have response.data.grade. Data. That's the grade information. But I could do response.data.username. There's the username. And skill name. There's the skill name. So I could do that there, but it's probably not how it would, like a normal API would work. They're probably just going to give you back the grade. But if you can, if that's how you want to get it to work, that's fine. Let's do it another way. So, you know, on my front end, I should now have like maybe the information somewhere. So I could, on my props.addGrade, I could try passing it here. Or in my, when I add it, I can maybe go through and, so I have my skills here, right? And I have my grades. So I have my users and I have my grades. Let's use our functions. Let's do let user equal users.find. Let's just find that user. u.id equals res.data dot user underscore ID. What is the difference between find and filter? They work like the exact same thing. They pretty much do the exact same thing. There's one small difference though. And it's an important difference.
Find only returns the first item to meet the condition.
Yeah, so find will do that. It will return the first thing it finds. Filter will return all of the matches. So I just want to find one thing. I just want to find that one user. So user is not going to be in an array. It's going to be an object because that's what type of data that is. Could do the same thing with skill. Skills.find. Go through all my skills and match the one that matches the skill ID. So now I want to spread out over res.data because I want it to match what that state looks like. And if you remember, I can show you. If you don't remember, I'll show you. So I'll go to my React inspector. I want to find the grades and more where that state lives. Oh, I'm in my debugger. Where is it? Sorry, where does my grade state live? Oh, it's on this Axios on mount. Let me, sorry, That's my homework. There it is. So I want to match this object. So I have an ID score, username, skill name, user ID, skill.id. So when I spread out over res.data, that is my grade. So that's going to give me the ID score, user ID, and skill ID. But then I want to also add these two things, the username and skill name. So I spread out over my grade, but then I want to add a username key, which would be user.name, and a skill name key. Skill.name. So yeah, we could send the data back on the front end, or sorry, on the back end. But we could also, since I have all the users, I have all the skills, I can just go through them on my front end, find the user, find the skill, and then pull off that name and this name of the user and the name of the skill. To fix that little issue. So now when I add a score, I should refresh, and I'm going to get rid of this debugger. Oh, I think I did. So let's go ahead, pick my user, pick my skill, give it a score. Now I'm getting the name and the homework too. So yeah, it's kind of dependent on the API. Like your API might give you back the data the way you want it, or it might not. So you as like a full stack developer, you can kind of decide how to do it. You can kind of choose. I would say just as you're like learning, experiment, doing it both ways, like experiment on the back end, kind of like we did with this all and then some, create these custom methods that give you back the data the way you want it. Or you could do it on the front end where you do like this kind of little bit of a brain teaser to kind of get it the way you want it. Does that make sense? This gets to be, this can be like a little bit of like brain teasers. So, or like a coding challenge. Have you heard about coding challenges? I think we talked about them briefly. We're going to start doing them more, like probably like we'll do some before class. Like here's a little brain teaser as a warm up. Now that we're going to start seeing these more. These type of things can also be like, for some companies will do these as like interview questions. Like they'll give you a question, something like, you get an array of numbers, and then they want you to like, here's a common one. Like go through an array of numbers, and if it's divisible by 3, so go through the array of numbers, print out the array of numbers. If it's divisible by 3, have it print out fizz. If it's divisible by 5, have it print out buzz. And if it's divisible by 15, have it print out, or if it's divisible by 3 and 5, have it print out fizz buzz. So they might give you a question like that where it's maybe a little more, I mean, these can get challenging, but can definitely make these hard. But I think they're generally sometimes a little simpler, but then you have to like code it in front of people. Like it's like on the spot, like, okay. And it's generally like kind of like a closed book type question. Can't really use Google. So let's just do this one just as a little demo. Demo.js. And actually, let me give you like 5 minutes or something to try this on your own. So here's the instructions. Go through an array of numbers. And print them out. But, so I think this one, like if this one should be like, so you go through an array of numbers, you print them out. If it's divisible by 3, that should say fizz. It's divisible by 5, it should say buzz. It's divisible by 15, say fizz buzz. So this one, if you had this array, it should print out, 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, 6, 7, 8, fizz, 11, fizz. Oh, I skipped 10. That should be buzz. That should be 11. Does that make sense though? I'm screwing this up. 13, 14 is buzz. So take about 5 minutes and then we'll do this together. And try to do this without Google. Just try to do this on your own. Just realized that 6 should be fizz. All right. Let me just go through this one with you really quick. So with this one, so I want to go through, this array. I want to go through each thing and print something out. So to me, this sounds like a for each loop. You could also do this with the for loop, but I like the for each loop. So I'm going to go through each thing. So let's rename this to be nums. I'm going to go through each number. And, just to start out, I think I know this one's really a simpler one, but with these brain teasers, and definitely if it's during like an interview, just get this, get it working, like get something working. So I might just start out with this one. Well, let me first start out just by seeing if I can log all the numbers. Don't try to worry about, that fizzbuzz part yet. Like, let's just try to get this running. Real. So that would be like the first thing. Okay, cool. I'm now printing out all the numbers. Because I've seen this before, like during interviews, especially like interviewing for TAs. I think because what happens is when you interview, you get nervous, you get a little stressed, because you're kind of put on the spot. It's like, hey, code this in front of me. You have like 3 people watching you code and you get stressed out. And what actually happens when you get stressed out is the thinking part of your brain, like your prefrontal cortex, actually starts to shut down. So the stress actually makes you a little more dumb and like being put on the spot like that. So by doing that just step by step, keeping it simple, that's going to help. because if I were to say like, instead of just going through each num, like going through this, like I'd say like write a function that does this. Like const fizzbuzz. So I would write a function that takes some array and does this. So I'm just wrapping that in a function. So I'll see people do this and then they'll try to start doing all this code. And then you can tell they're nervous. You know, more and more stuff. And then they go try to run it. So they save it. They go try and run it. And it doesn't even run. And they're like, oh, what did I do wrong? I did this wrong? Like what's going on here? But they'll do something as simple as like, oh, I forgot to like call the function. Because you get stressed out. So just get this as you're doing these brain teasers, especially in an interview. It's like, oh, cool. I'm going to create a function fizzbuzz, and that's going to take an array. Let's have that actually be array. It's kind of cheating. So now that goes through each thing's in my array and just prints them out. So I got that part working. Now I can kind of worry about some of the logic stuff. But because now before I print out the number, I need to check like if my num, you know, mod 3 equals 0, I can do the console.log buzz. Sweet. 3, so. And then I could throw this in an else because it's going 1, 2, but it's still printing that number. So now I can wrap this in an else. Sweet. And if I'm doing it step by step, I might catch a mistake. Like I might. Does anyone see the mistake I made? I mean, well, let me do this. Let's do it this way. I'm going to say like, let's do our 15 one. If number mod 5 equals 0. It's console.log buzz. Let's do this as an else if. Oh, I'm doing buzz, sorry, fizz. That was a stupid mistake. That was not intentional. So I got my fizz. So I'm doing 1, 2, fizz. There's my 5, 6, fizz, 7, 8, fizz, buzz. 12 is fizz. But now all of a sudden, 15 is fizz. Well, I don't have that case, so let's do that case. But this is where, like, I think, you know, this one, they're trying to trip you up a little, is the order of the else if. If I do this down here, because I'm going to say, well, else if the number is divisible by 5 and num is divisible by 3, that equals 0. Also.log is buzz. Okay, so you might get to a spot like this where it's not working, and then you kind of want to like try to work out the problem. So go, for some reason when it's 15, it's printing out fizz. Well, let's kind of go through this. If I do an if statement, if my number mod, if like say number is 15, if that mod does 15 mod 3 equal 0? Yes. So we print fizz. Oh, and yeah, with an if else statement, if we run and hit one of these expressions, then and it evaluates it true, then we just run that code and then we stop. So for this one, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to make the chain. I need to check if it's divisible by 15 first, before I check if it's divisible by 3 or 5. And then I need to switch this to fizzbuzz and that to fizz. One, two. So it's okay, like if as you're going through these brain teasers, if you run into like little snags, but I think what like an interviewer wants to hear is that they're kind of giving you these problems to see your problem solving skills. So and if you run into an issue, they kind of want to see how you think about it, how you're going to solve it. So just first little hint of interview whiteboard questions is, I would say start practicing now. And I would even say when you practice speaking out loud, like you're doing an interview question. Because I think what can really be bad is if you get kind of hung up on maybe you got hung up because 15 was printing fizz and not fizzbuzz. I think where it looks bad is if you're just silent and you're just kind of like doing stuff and you're not explaining what you're doing. They kind of want to hear how you're thinking about stuff. Cool. And did I talk about Edibit yet? Or some of these sites where you can practice these coding challenges?
Yeah, I went and used Edibit for a little bit, but then I ran out of free questions pretty quickly.
Okay, so yeah, Edibit, I think Edibit's a good one. Why is that not letting me go there? Oh, it's edibit.com. Edibit's a good one because they have I think they have a good UI, and then they have very easy ones. So if you're just starting out, I think, very easy or easy can just be a good place to start to kind of just get a hang of it. But yeah, do you know how many they let you do before they started charging you?
It was like a certain amount of points. I think I got up to 70 points or something like that. And you get different points for different questions.
There's other ones. I would maybe find one you like. I really think it's maybe not maybe like a bad investment to get a subscription, especially once you're done with the boot camp and once you're getting into more interview mindset. But there's other ones. There's Leak Code. There's Code Wars. I think Leak Code is pretty popular. Another thing with some of these, is it with Leak Code? I want to go explore. Yeah, Google interview. Gee, okay. Go to problems. So they have courses you could go through, but then they just have the problems. Now, some of these can be pretty hard. The medium level ones are pretty hard, but the nice thing about these, I swear, you find one. I don't know, threesome. I don't know what this is. You can come in here, you can test it out, and you might when you first see these, you might be like, what the hell is this? But something you can do is you can Google, here's like a little trick, Google or Leet code. And then you like, so Google Leet code and then the name of the question. And a lot of these have like videos for these, like for each question where they go through and they explain the question. And a lot of these type of questions, they're not going to go out and just code it. They're going to like go on a whiteboard and draw out like how to do it. And so, and then they explain, you know, it's not just about the code. It's like, here's the data structure. Here's the algorithm that you want to understand. And you kind of, it's not just about understanding the code. So you could watch this, like they might solve it in Java. You might not know Java, but they'll probably, in these videos, they'll like do just an explanation of how to solve it just in like words and on the whiteboard. And when you get to these harder ones, you really need to like kind of come up with like a strategy first. But it's really, it's one of these things I've always said, like these coding challenges, it's like if you're a musician, these are kind of like practicing skills. Or if you're like a basketball player, like these are like doing, you know, free throws. It's like kind of working on the fundamentals. So I would start, if you haven't, I think now is kind of a good time to start working on some of these. Just spend, you know, do one a day. Just maybe set a goal to do one a day. You know, I would start with the easy ones, work your way up. But yeah, like I said, you can go, and for a lot of these, you know, some of them, I'm not sure if all of them are going to have them, but I think most of these, like there's so many of these videos out there, or like a Medium article to explain the problem. So there's tons of resources out there. And then like, you know, this article is giving you like, you know, a naive approach, and then some different, like how you could do this with hashing, how you could do it with whatever. So they might give you a couple different options of how to do it. And as you slowly go through these, you'll pick up little tips, you'll pick up little tricks. And then once you get into like, because it is useful, because then when you get into questions like when you're actually coding, like, oh, I have this one array and I want to like, I have these two arrays and I want to merge them into like a different kind of array. Like, how do I do that? Oh, well, I practice my brain teasers, so I have a couple of good ideas. And we'll see some more examples, as especially when we get into like the SQL week. When we get into SQL, it's like we're going to be doing a lot also with like React and normalizing data. So cool. But I think that is it for today. Are there any questions? Check out these websites. Really, I really strongly suggest like doing one of these, even if you do it like 3 days a week. Just do one of these a day. Watch like, and really try to understand. Don't just get them right. Try to understand the like concepts behind these brain teasers for these coding challenges.
So you said there's Edibit, LeetCode, and Code Wars, James?
Yeah. I mean, if you go like apply at Google, Google's going to be asking you these kind of questions, and they're going to be hard. They're going to be picking like probably some of the like medium level ones, maybe even some hard ones. But this is, you'll see people who, you know, they're really like their goal was to work at Google, and they just got really good at these little brain teasers. Once you get into like the harder ones, you probably need to like spend a lot of time learning about data structures and algorithms. But yeah, cool. I think that is it for me. So if you have any questions, we can hop off. We'll just be continuing working on the assignment and from yesterday. So we'll just see you back at 2 o'clock.
See ya.
Adios.